Pedro from A&P-Reacts. I'm here today with Zorn of Zornheym to talk about their latest record, the Zornheym Sleep Experiment. Out right now. You can go listen to it. How's it going?
Very well. Well, I've had a good day, and the album is going very well. I think we're getting a lot of cool reviews coming to us, so I couldn't be happier.
And let's get right into this record. And starting off with the concept, the theme that drives this album. Can you elaborate a little bit for those that are perhaps not as familiar with this record, with the story of this album, the story that's within this album?
Yeah, so the album takes place at this fictional asylum that's located somewhere in Germany called Zornheym. And on the first album, we went there as well and introduced a couple of inmates and told like the life stories and why they were locked up at the asylum. And on that album, there's a song called Whom the Night Brings, that's about a girl that's called Angelika Engel. And she suffers from something that's called sleep paralysis. And she keeps telling the main doctor, Dr. Beetleheim, that she gets these nightly visits from some demons that she claimed that they call themselves the incubis, and this kind of sparks his interest for why we are sleeping. So he actually put together a statement of intent and decides to do a study on why the humans needs to sleep. So basically, he's thinking that it might be that simple, that we sleep because the body needs to regenerate and the brain needs to process everything it's been experienced during the day. Or is it something more profound behind the reason why we're sleeping? Like these incubi are coming to kind of tranquilize our inner demons so we can remain human. So basically, the whole album is a sleep experiment where he takes 9 inmates. He put them in a chamber that's actually called the chamber, and they are monitoring them through an observatory, and they give them this gas called adrenochrome that's being distributed to them via gas masks. And the gas is making them wide awake, so they can't sleep. And then the trick is to figure out like what is going to happen with them. They're supposed to stay in there for 30 days without sleep. And yeah, let's say that the whole demonic aspects shows to it's something with the demonic stuff that's going to happen during the experiment.
When I look at these two records, well, they're interconnected with one another, obviously, and they both have this concept behind them, a concept that's also interconnected. Is there something about concept records that offers you something that a regular album doesn't give you, or is just the way it got started for you?
Personally, I think concepts album are more interesting, and I mean, I got into concept albums when I started listening to King Diamond, like many years ago, and I was like blown away on how he constructed the album, and it always left me like an idea. What if you always stayed in the same universe? You know, because King Diamond, he makes a killer concept album and then he moves on to the next. And I got interested in what if you always stayed in the same world, but you know, you kept expanding on it. You know, like TV series of today, where you know you can find small, cool Easter eggs. That was something from the first season, or like the prologue, or the pilot, or whatever. And I mean, we even did it that way, that the outro on the first album, that's actually the intro to the new album, because Corpus Vile starts off with the same riff that the acoustic guitars are playing in the outro. So it's so nerdy and sophisticated that you're supposed to play the two albums, and then you get like the full picture.
Get a sense of sequence between them. Now, with this connection between them, and with the ability now you have to look back and look at both of them separately, which one was more challenging, the debut record or the sophomore album?
I think the latest one, the Zornheym Sleep Experiment, was trickier to do, because I think we really tried to top everything that we had done on the first album. Of course, you know, putting the band together and creating, you know, the blueprint for Zornheym's sound was a huge challenge on the first album. But I mean, we spent basically 4 years on making this album. Of course, not every day, but you know, like 2 years of prepping before we went into the studio. And Steve Joachim, our drummer, he actually recorded the drums already 2 years ago. So we have been really working on this album, and that's something that it really has to take its time, because we write so much notation and stuff for all the classical musicians, and that takes a lot of time to do.
A lot of times when you listen to a concept album, the songs within that record only really work well within the confines of the album. They almost need the song that came before and the one that comes after in order for the track to make more sense. One of the great things about this record is that I felt like you could get a lot more out of these tracks if you listen to the album in order. But if you play a song off this album on its own, it still works really well on its own merit. So how do you find this balance of having a record that the songs work in the concept of the album, but at the same time, for this new audience that's perhaps discovering the record on Spotify, the songs can still stay as individual tracks and work as well as they do in the concept of the record?
Yeah, that's something that I think is very important, that, you know, our concept is like some sort of onion that you're supposed to, if you're interested in like the first layer, just to hear a very good song, that should be there for you if that's your thing. But if you're interested in, you know, the world behind everything, like lyrics wise or whatnot, then there's so many different layers that you can peel off and discover. And I mean, there's so much detail work done in the whole concept that there's like no name is used just because it sounds cool. There's always a connection to like Greek mythology or whatever that you can find in everything. So there's you can really go down the rabbit hole. But I also wanted the songs to work as individual tracks. So you know, you can just put on one song and be like, yeah, this is a cool, catchy song. But if you want to, and you want to take the ride into the Zornheym universe, then there's a lot of stuff for you to discover.
At what point do you start working on the tracking listing for a record? Is that part of the early process, or do you start to look at the track listing once you have the songs completed?
quite early in the process with this album, the Zornheym Sleep Experiment, I had like the general drama in the whole album planned out before, so I knew that I wanted to like lower the tempo before the last song that was supposed to be this really dramatic ending where all guns blazing and there's blood everywhere. And there I wanted it to be, you know, very dramatic. So and like a song like Dead Silence is, it's actually a really quiet lyric wise. It's very, you know, everyone is quiet and they're about to doze off because their bodies haven't really adjusted to the situation that they are in. So that's why like the tempo in that one goes up and down as well, because there's like short sections where there's only a harp and some strings, and then it bams, and that's supposed to symbolize that, you know, there's a person like dozing off, and then all of a sudden the gas hits and they're like, oh fuck, wide awake. So like I said, there's so many nerdy details that you can go through with everything.
When you look at the debut record and you look at this one, did you have certain elements of the debut album that you wanted to carry forward into this album, and some elements of the debut album that you felt didn't match what you wanted to achieve with this record?
I think we wanted to trim the songs a little bit and make them shorter to really make them work as standalone songs even better, to do more with the memorable and catchy and groovy stuff. And something that I felt that I really wanted to improve on this album was also the use of choirs, to not only let the choir sing or or ooh or something like that, to actually use them to sing words as well, and have them filling in some of Bendler's lead vocals, or even let them take the lead in a track like Slumber Comes in Time, where the male choir is actually singing the whole chorus. So and then we wanted to try out some woodwind stuff that you can discover in a track like Slumber Comes in Time. It's nicely buried in the mix, but you know, it sticks out because it's a instrument that really you play it very high up. So
we were talking about the track listing before, and I really want to say this to you. I thought the time of the length of the record was absolutely perfect, and the length of the songs as well, because sometimes when you get into a concept album, things get drawn out so much that you almost lose track of where you are within the story. And if that happens, then you lose interest in the record altogether. It just doesn't make sense anymore to the listener. The fact that you guys kept everything so concise, so packed together, it makes the overall experience so much more dynamic. It's super engaging, it's super interesting. When you get to the end, you're almost ready to play it again because you didn't feel like you listened to it enough. So I want to congratulate you for having that thought process of realizing that sometimes long does not necessarily make things better, you know?
Thank you very much. And I totally agree with you on that. I mean, like, I think Iron Maiden in the 80s, they were the kings on making albums like, you know, Number of the Beast, Power Slave. It's about 7 to 8 tracks. And it's perfect because when you're done with the album, just like you're saying, you feel like I want some more, and then you play the album again. And then I think the band has really achieved something. If you make the listener want to replay the album, it's a very interesting album. And I've done that so many times with The Number of the Beast or other cool albums like that.
You also mentioned the choirs, and that was where I wanted to go next, is with the choirs and the strings that you added to the soundscape of this record. How important it is for your vision for the concept of this album to have a real choir, have real strings, and not just use like computers and synths in order to create that same sound?
To us, it's very important, and we would actually love to use more real instruments, like a real brass section or something like that. But this was what our budget could manage at the moment. And I mean, the first time I wrote an album that I made a string arrangement for, and I got the strings back. I was so emotional because, you know, it's one thing when you sit and hit some keyboards on a synth, but then when you get that same thing back from a bunch of musicians that are super skilled, and they play it like they mean it from their depth of their soul, it's something completely different. And I mean, the string musicians that we used, there's actually one of them that has worked with Dimmu Borgir, and another one has worked with the Swedish Philharmonica. So they were really skilled people. You know, we asked them before, like, do you want to have the notations on beforehand? No, no worries, we'll nail it. And they got their papers, and you know, they played it better than we did, and they played it like with such a enormous feeling. So I got like almost tears in my eyes the first time I heard like it perfectly mixed, you know, because it makes such a huge difference when there's an actual person playing it. And that's why our albums take such a long time to produce, but I'm working on cutting that time right now.
I also felt that this album had this great Victorian atmosphere to it. You know what I mean? Like, do you
Yeah.
feel like perhaps that Victorian atmosphere is coming from having those real choirs and those real strings behind the sound?
Yes, and I mean, I really enjoy that kind of music, you know, like classical music and Victorian music. So I mean, harpsichords and all that kind of stuff, that really turns me on. You know, that makes me crazy when I hear stuff like that. And yeah, it's just something special when you get that kind of sounds together, and you get it as real as possible.
We're talking about, you know, the choirs, the strings, but we have to also talk about the guitars. Even though that those elements perhaps really jump out, the guitar sound on this record is really outstanding. What game plan did you guys have together coming into this record? What do you wanted the sound of the guitars to be like?
I think we actually got like a good idea of what we wanted to do on the first album. We had like one guitar that's a little bit more bassy sounding, and another one that's a little bit higher pitched when it comes to more treble. And the first guitar is like more trebly, and the second guitar has a lot more bass in the bottom. And something that we really try and do with our music is to give the guitar a very dominant role, because I feel that a lot of symphonic bands, they use more the guitar as a spice, you know, and let them play or different rhythmic patterns or something like that. And since we are guitar players and we like to play guitars, we really want the guitar to have like a dominant role. It's going to be the train that drives the whole song forward. And yeah, that's something that's really important to us, to have like the music evolving around the guitar riff, then have a really cool orchestral arrangement, and then we put on the guitar. So usually most of the riffs and stuff like that, it's firstly composed on the guitar, and then we add everything else as a spice to it. But we add a lot of stuff. So
you guys add a lot of spices.
Yeah. We like it. I mean, like we've been going with the whole Yngwie Malmsteen, like more is more, when we've been recording the album, and I think we ended up using like 450 channels on this album. So it was a lot of notes and stuff to digest. So Sverker Widgren of Wing Studio, he did an incredible job when he was mixing the album.
When you're writing the lyrics for a record like this, it's a concept. You're telling a fictitious story, but how much of your own personality or your own even personal experiences goes into these fictitious stories?
Every now and then, you're realizing that you put something that you've experienced in your own life. Like when we were recording the first album, I had been going through some really dark stuff, and I think a lot of the lyrics kind of reflected that, but you kind of twist it in a way so I know that it's there, but no one else is gonna find it. But I think the same thing happened on this album, that that you kind of deal with your stuff, but and you leave like small traces of it in the lyrics as well.
Was there a difficult song for you on this record that almost didn't make the cut for the record?
I think one of the songs that I reworked, I think there were like two songs that I worked a lot on. And to begin with, like Corpus Vile, we had decided that it was going to do this Gregorian chant part in the beginning, and have that like almost like a chorus, and then we wanted Bendler to sing that part in the end, and that part is play in E, and it's a lot of open string stuff on a guitar. And then Bendler told me, like, I would like to have this part in C instead, because that's gonna fit my voice a lot better. And I had like the hardest time of transposing the riffs from E to C, and it ended up with me sitting like a whole weekend doing that last bit when Bendler is singing the Latin part, and I worked on it so hard. But in the end, it's like one of my favorite parts of the whole album. When the church or organ and everything is coming in, it's like really taking you to places. And another song that I worked on a lot was The Revelation, and like the first version of that song doesn't sound very much like the final result on this one.
You mentioned already a little bit in terms of the choirs and how you didn't want them to just come in and go, like you wanted, you wanted a little bit more from them. Once you have that vision of what you want out of the choirs, and then you have a vocalist with the potential of the vocalist that you have, how do you merge those two without one, trampling the other, without one running over the other?
We're lucky that our vocalist Bendler, he has a very wide range. So when the choir goes pretty low, he can be pretty high up, and also the other way around it. And usually I had been trying out stuff like that I had like bits and pieces where I had like choir samples singing stuff, and me and Skuka went through those parts and we're thinking like, can we squeeze in some words here so it will make sense with what Bendler is singing, and it's gonna bring this vision of having a more singing choir, bringing that to life as well. And we had a couple of sessions where we did that, and actually one thing that happened through that session was that we did that choir intro for Dead Silence, because that wasn't supposed to be there. But when we were toying around with different ideas on how to put words on choir melodies, we realized that we could actually make a very cool intro, and the intro got like longer and longer. And we should start with a female choir, and then the cello and the viola is going to come in, and then the guys are coming in, and the harp is coming in, and then so everything just grew and became like this monster that got its own life, basically.
One last question for you. When you look at this record, or when you even look at the band, what part of this album, what part of the band is deeply connected with your own personality, with who you are as an individual?
I would probably say a lot of the instrumental parts, where the music takes you to places where it's like taking you to a journey where you feel like, okay, I'm going somewhere in my head, and the music is my soundtrack, basically. Those are the most personal parts from me on this album.
Wow, really interesting. I thought you were going to say the asylum, like you see yourself like the guy running the asylum with all the lunatics surrounding you. That's kind of how I feel in the world today. I'm in the middle of this asylum, and maybe I'm the lunatic, but from my point of view, everybody else is the lunatic.
Yeah. That's an interesting view on it as well.
Yeah, it actually would make a very good concept album from that perspective. Zorn, thank you very much for your time today, man. It was an absolute pleasure to chat with you, to talk to you about the band, about the record. You know how I feel about the album. I really enjoy this record. You guys did a phenomenal job with this album, and I'm really happy to see all the praise that's been coming your way with this release. You guys definitely deserve it.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it, and it was so cool that you guys wanted to pick up the album on your channel, and because I've seen you guys around, so it felt really cool that you wanted to take the opportunity to check us out and headbang to it.
Yeah, you opened our appetite with the video that we did earlier on from the previous record. That kind of opened our appetite. So when I saw this album coming around, I saw the continuation of the concept. I was like, I have to check it out. I have to see what you guys have in store for this new record. And I was not disappointed in the least. I absolutely loved the album. As you, I grew up listening to King Diamond, and concept albums was always the thing that fascinated me. I love to get deep and get lost within the stories. And I think you guys delivered it perfectly on this record.
Oh, that's awesome to hear. And once you see like the physical version as well, you can see our photographer and graphic designer Jens Rydén. He's done like this incredible job with making the story come to life in the booklet as well. He's been like constructing different session notes, and there's like blood spilled on it, and all kinds of gas mask hanging around, and yeah, it's just super cool.
Thank you very much, Zorn. All the best to you and the guys. Much success with this album, and I'll see you soon.
Yeah, take care, man.
Take care.